Carlos is with me. Hello, Carlos. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
I clearly haven't had enough coffee this morning, but it's all good. We'll make up for
Perhaps
that.
it's Stream Deck that has not got
Yeah,
enough
maybe.
coffee.
I'm not going to try pouring coffee on my stream deck, though. I don't feel like that's going to help. That's probably not going to help matters. Our Belladurian's redeemed hydrate. Right, there we go. I'm going to go straight in for the coffee then. But let's get on with this show and say hello again to Carlos. It's very nice to have you with me again.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here again. Actually, so it was kind of something that we had discussed when we went to the top five, and since, as you mentioned, life will happen, we decided, okay, let's do it now that we have things sorted out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I will very quickly post into the chat, and if you're watching this on YouTube, it will be down below. But I'm going to post the link to the non D&D top five that we did. So Carlos and I did top five non D&D RPGs. We ran through our top five, talked about them, talked about why we love them, all of those kind of things. Do check out that video, preferably after the stream. Don't head over there right now. But yeah, do check that out. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, and Carlos is repping one of his top five with his t-shirts. Oh no, I've got a general sci-fi geekery t-shirt on rather than it being a specific.
For this game, I even have an LP actually.
Oh, do you have a record player?
Yeah, I do not own a record player right now, but I actually bought some records for Dai as well from some bands that she enjoys. So I said, why not do one for myself as well? And it is gorgeous, actually.
Oh, very nice, very nice. So presumably, that as we established on that show, that's Chris Bissett.
Yep.
Presumably, that's him doing the music as well.
Yeah.
There we are. There we are. That's what you get with the indie RPG experience. You don't only get the RPG, you get all that stuff to go with it, the soundtrack, everything. Amazing, amazing. So let's start off talking a little bit about you, and then we'll kind of go and talk about the indie RPG scene generally, if that's all right, Carlos. So, How did you kind of get your start in role-playing games?
In role-playing games in general, okay. So
I'll take you right back.
Some like 20 something years ago, I guess. Wow. I was.
Looks like he'd be a baby.
Yeah, something like that. No, I was actually around 8 or 9,
right.
And I played with a friend of mine. We played one session of D&D. I guess that it was 3, just 3.
Third edition.
But right after that, actually, I moved to 3D&T. Which is a Brazilian game actually,
right?
And it's 3D&T because it is the third version of a game called Defensores de Tóquio, so Defenders of Tokyo.
Oh, okay.
Because it's based in anime and all of that, and they also had an comic book about the story of that is called Holy Avenger,
right?
And then I started playing with that, which is a very simple game. 5 stats, just D6s. And then quickly afterwards, I went to D&D 3.5.
Right.
And then we played 3.5 for a long while.
So is Defenders... Sorry, just to go back to that. You said it's Defenders of Tokyo, is that right?
Yeah.
So and that's a Brazilian-Portuguese game. So is that... What's the kind of... tell us a little bit about that, I guess.
I mean, actually, it is from a publishing group in Brazil, and they are quite big right now.
Right.
They have also a scenario that now got into a campaign, actually a full-blown game that is Tormenta. And the game itself, it's not indie because now it is with the bigger publisher in Brazil, but it is very gender neutral or neutral setting, because you can play high tech, you can play adventure and so on, but all of them are not like they are very high fantasy usually, because you are pretty powerful with, because your regular stats for regular players go from 1 to 5, but 1 is already highly above the average of the normal people. So
okay, so it's not like to use the kind of the D&D example, it's not like you can be worse than average. You're already like a hero. It's just how heroic you are.
Yeah, it's completely not like the early editions of D&D, for example, that they are gritty and dark, and you are just a regular nobody,
Yeah.
and then try to get not killed and go in adventure. And like the whole experience that the OSR community is also trying to emulate with
Right.
old school essentials, with
Mm.
Troika and plenty of
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
games actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it? Sorry, I'm really interested in this defense. Okay, so is it kaiju kind of stuff? Is it? Are you defending from monsters?
Not exactly. As I said, you can be in a plenty of different scenarios.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we played regular fantasy with that at first, but you have some books that put you in that kind of very anime kind of
Right.
stuff, and that
Yeah.
you can have superpowers.
Mm.
And it is a game that uses kind of skills, so you can get not actually skills, but feats,
Mm.
and some feats give you advantages and some of them gives you disadvantages, and so then you can get more points to spend and all of
Right.
that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So even though, as you say, it's not actually an indie game by the definition that you would use now, but obviously right from the beginning, you were into all kinds of different games. There's it's not like you know.
Actually, to say one thing that is strange is that me and my brother sometimes we used to play like without dice, without character sheet or anything. We were just waiting for my mom to get out of her job,
Mm.
because we studied in a school that was pretty close from there. I
Mm.
was still in fundamental school, like 12 years,
Right.
10 years, something like that. And then we were there in the record store waiting, and we started to like DM and narrate one another, so that, oh, you attempt to do that, and then the GM would say if you succeed or not,
Mm.
but just go with that without dices, without anything to randomize. So
So,
it
so you've been creating your own RPGs from a very young age.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe not writing them down, but I guess I mean fundamentally that's kind of like when you're a very young child, when you're haha RPG Latin America represents. So when you're a really really young child, I guess there's all games, the make believe games. You're taking on different roles, and it's kind of like an extension of that, really, isn't it?
One of the first definitions of RPGs that I got into was that they are make believe with some rules,
Mm.
like, because all of us are familiar with the make believe play, like we do. Everyone does it
Mm.
in some kind of another. So this is just a way to put some parameters that to get to define if you succeed more than not, instead of just shouting into each other.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine the issue if. So I have a brother that's 2 years older than me. I imagine if we'd done that kind of thing, I would have very quickly, if something had failed and he just decided it had failed, I would very quickly have got very annoyed with him. So I think that's where the dice and the things do come in as useful additions into those games.
Yeah, it is kind of to help have a neutral arbiter in
Yeah, yeah. Even if that neutral arbiter is the dice,
yeah.
that's good. I'm hydrating for Pete the Priest. Pete the Priest is my go-to hydrator in all things. Well, it's lovely to see so many people in chat. Hello to everybody there. Yeah, so yeah. I mean, I guess that's the thing. As you say, it's not like you ever really start. I mean, clearly there is a time because before you speak, you can't play. But you're. It's kind of that ongoing thing, and it's always looking for ways to. I think that was really interesting where you said it there, which is that you're always kind of make believe. You're always in these roles, and then you're just looking to find ways to kind of codify that and make it structured in a way that helps you, rather than looking for a structure to play within.
Yeah, yeah. I am very proponent on the idea of trying to get rules and structures that assist you to get the experience that you have, more than that hinders you, and that you have to make do with that rule. Like, because there are some systems that they are not pretty appropriate to the kind of genre or story that you want to tell, and then the system is more hindering you
Yeah.
than actually helping you to get the experience. It's more frustrating than
Yeah, yeah. And I think, as I've said before, I am not anti D&D in the way that some people are. I think it serves a role well. But I think one of the things which kind of frustrates me is when people see they have an idea for something and they think, right, how can I make D&D work for this? When actually it's not. It doesn't lend itself to that. D&D does some things well. It's not just that kind of tool set in the sense. It is a game that you have to adapt hardware as opposed to kind of coming up with your own things and building a world, building a system yourself.
Yeah, it does not grind my gears just as much as when they make everything like this is a D&D that does something. No, this is another game. It's no D&D at all.
Yeah.
But it's still something that some people, I understand that some people think that or justify using D&D for everything because it's known for them and everything. But as we mentioned on the top 5, there are some other games, not just indie, but indie is pretty proponent in that, in having games that you just get the rules. Yeah. The rules are perhaps a leaflet.
Yeah, exactly.
You just read that
a side of A4 back and
front. In 5 minutes before the game, and you have everything figured out, and just go from that. You do not have to expend $150 to buy the books. Read a lot of it before starting, so like studying, and then go into the test of play.
I definitely never looked at it quite in those terms, but I mean, I absolutely see what you mean, and I think people feel the pressure to know all the rules of a game before they play it, and when all those rules are front and back of a side of A4, then you can go in and actually whatever you're playing, it doesn't matter if you don't know all the rules, but there is definitely that perception when you start out that that's the case, and it is there is a little bit of a difference between not even memorizing, but understanding 2 pages of A4 as opposed to 300.
To be perfectly candid, I could make when I was younger, I could make a rogue mage of up until level 5 with no rulebook because I knew the whole rules for it by head, and even knew all the pages and everything because I read the player handbook of 3.5 cover to cover more than once.
Right.
But you do not need to do that.
I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure I've ever read any like full TTRPG book cover to cover. I'll read sections. I'll jump backwards and forwards. I'm not sure I ever have. I'm just going to go to chat very quickly. Somebody says system matters.
Duam, he is from Argentina.
There you go. Yeah. Duam, says that. So, and Katerina quite rightly says that some people use D&D partly because it has the financial benefits of big. And honestly, small creators, I'm not going to tell anyone they shouldn't work in a D&D system, because if that's how they can, carve themselves out a niche, build a living, whatever it is, absolutely. And I honestly feel like for some people, they feel like making some of those small adaptations is a bit more manageable for them than, opening a blank notebook and going, okay, what happens here? Some people love that experience, but for some people, that's really intimidating and terrifying. Is that...
This is one of the games that I was mentioning. You can see you have very light rules, and this is one of the systems that we mentioned in the top 5. That it's so light rules and manageable that you can play by post so easily. Like
and when we were talking about the on the top 5s, I know a few people in chat were saying that they'd never played play by post, but actually it sounded really interesting to them. And I think it's funny how it's one of those I always think of, and this is wrong. I'm not saying that it's not, but I always think of play by post, play by mail as being something which happened years and years ago. And now we have the technology, which means you don't have to do that. But actually, there's something really beautiful and interesting about that, which is a different experience. It's not, and I guess I'm going to draw a slightly odd analogy here, but why not? It's a little bit like, so you've got records up on your shelf. It's like, well, why don't you just have them? Why don't you have an MP3 of it? Well, it's not actually better. It's just a different experience, and you're getting something that you enjoy and you love in that different way.
Yeah, completely. It's like having like records, for example, and getting the mindset of because I do not own a record player, but I try to simulate that experience with like playing the whole album, because this is something that record players, you need to do that because you cannot easily jump.
Yeah, just pick it up, put it down in another place.
Yeah, and then you try to emulate this different experience, and you can enjoy the things that you like in a different layer, a different way. And with play by post, what I enjoy a lot is that asynchronous experience, because then I can easily play with my friends in multiple time zones without having an issue, because we do not have to be like every day or every week we will get together in that time and everything. So we just there are some different ways to do it, but we usually stipulate, okay, at 18 o'clock Brazilian time, the GM, the narrator, will then put another input but up until then, you can post as many times as you like, once, none, or whatever, and that's just...
Yeah, and it is such a different way of playing the game. I think so. The Ball GM says that for some people, even game store owners, D&D is the same as TTRPG, and I think, I mean, I'd like to think that's mostly true of like, bookstores or something rather than actual like gaming shops. But I think that's absolutely true. It's almost, in some people's minds, it is almost synonymous, D&D and TTRPG, rather than it being, okay, well, here is the most famous example, and this works for some people, but here are lots of other ways, that you can engage with this genre.
Yeah, and this happens not just with when they compare it with indie games, but also some big games. Like you have The Wandering here, which I am quite fan of. It's not indie by any means, because it was previously on, actually not on, but it was Sophisticated Games that owns the license, okay, to make the games. So they had an agreement with Cubicle 7, which is a big one, that is the one that publishes Warhammer.
Yeah, they do Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, don't they?
Right now. And now the second edition will be with Free League Publishing from Sweden or
Are they the
something.
ones that do One Ring that we talked about before?
But this is One Ring. The second edition will be with Free League, and they made Alien. So they are big. They have a lot of money to get these licenses and everything. But even then, you have some people that say, "Okay, this is D&D with Alien." No.
I know. It's strange, isn't it? I'm just going to go over to chat again. I think there's been quite a few people talking about. Some people are saying that they definitely have read books cover to cover, and I think there's different ways of different people engaging it. But yeah, wishing they hadn't spent so much time reading it and invested into reading other games. And then Duam says, picking up on listening to a whole album, even if there are songs you don't like, I do the same with games when I try them the first couple of sessions, because rules getting out of my comfort zone might lead me to something I end up enjoying. And I think that's a really interesting point. And I think I think in the same way that now I'm going deep down this analogy rabbit hole, so I apologize. But I think in the same way that some musicians now, like back in the day, musicians or bands or whatever would craft an album, and that was the journey because that's how people enjoyed it. Now, I think a lot of musicians, not every musician obviously, but a lot of musicians work on singles and then kind of build that into an album, whatever. But I think it is that interesting thing of actually how are games being developed? How is it that you are meant to enjoy them? And if it is meant to be, okay, well, you can pick this up, play it, put it down, done. That's one way of enjoying a game, and that's fine. But also there is this idea of building and working into a system, and I think that's a really interesting point from Duam.
Yeah, totally. It's like I talk with Spencer Campbell that he is now releasing a new game, Nova, which uses Lumen. Lumen is kind of the system, what we would say, while Nova is the game, and he had other games, but it is more an SRD. So you have like the skeleton of the idea of what you want to do with that, and then you can build something into itself. Already the SRD, it informs you, because usually the games from this system, they are all very powerful. It's like you are good in what you are doing.
Yeah.
But it already informs you in how to engage with that kind of idea. You can like it, you can dislike it, and you can hack it. This is a very regular term in indie scenes, to hack a game. that is basically you like this game, but not everything, or
Yeah.
something that it does not, and then you just hack slash it, take the parts that you want, make another game from it, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
all good.
Yeah, and I think again that's why when we talk about like D&D and things, I don't want to kind of completely just leave it behind, because I think for some people that is a kicking off point, because they do kind of hack that and then kind of work that in with other games, and that leads them then into an interesting and kind of fertile area of, well, how do we do these things?
Yeah, exactly. Like my first published title was Race for 5e, and then from there,
Was that
the
the
Anasadas.
Anasidus? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
and then from there, I went full on. Okay, I will develop games. A
yeah.
lot of that was by influence of Chris, that released Ratchet. So I saw him releasing games. I saw I started getting into the indie scene at that moment as well, and then okay, that's nice. I can do light rules games. I can do other stuff, and then once I started doing my games as well, I started also researching more games and getting to know more, and seeing how it is tough to keep up with everything was when I decided to, okay, I will do indie news, because I had already a YouTube channel, and I thought, okay, now I can do some bite-sized episodes every week with what has happened. So what is going on in the indie scene,
Yeah, yeah.
basically.
So, all right, tell us a little bit about in the news then, because it's been going on a little while now, hasn't it?
Yeah, it is getting to the 18th consecutive week that I'm doing it. The episode was supposed to go live tomorrow, the 18th one, but I had some problems with exporting it. It will come around. Uh, but
Technology.
yeah, technology, and it is my 2014 laptop doing everything. So it's getting rough, but
Yes. I mean, it's no wonder. I mean, it's getting hot enough. You were saying it's getting up to around 30 where you are anyway, with the heat that's probably coming out of that laptop as it tries to do all these things.
yeah, it has some metal parts, and when I put my hand on top of it, I cannot lay it there. Otherwise, it starts burning.
But on the bright
So
side, you could always like fry yourself an egg on your old laptop or something.
yeah,
You know.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But just going back
Yeah.
with in the news is, then I started with the first episode. It was, and also why I went with that format is I enjoy watching some shows with uh, news about the world, like they have that have this format of light in the humor and stuff, but they also bring some information. So I thought, okay, let's do this kind of format of a news show, and but then let's talk, just because these usually have one main new piece of news, and then they develop a lot in that. And I decided to go, okay, let's try it and bring a lot of different informations, links, and put them all to make them easier for people to get to know the scene and keep up with that. Not just then new releases, because you have a lot of different with new releases. So this is out, this Kickstarter is going on, this crowdfunding, but also some other news in the way of, you have here a gem that you may have, perhaps may be interested. You have some bundle with an interesting or important topic, and you can support that. You have some article that was published talking about some game or some idea on games, and this kind of stuff. So
Yeah, and as Duan points out, you always wear a jacket, putting in the effort. So it's like a proper news show.
yeah, I always put a button shirt and a jacket, and
But
it's starting to get tough. So that's why I usually record at night.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think for me, I think the format that you go for is really an important part of why in the news works really well. I think because thank you, Lenore. Good to see you. And yeah, do have a good catch up later on. That would be lovely. So yeah, I think for me the kind of that exactly what you're talking about there is you're bringing a lot of information to people, but you're doing it in a kind of fun way. You're doing it with a sense of humor. You're doing it also, I mean, you have a natural enthusiasm about these things which comes across in the videos, and I think you could easily do a video like this, and you almost come across as a newsreader. You've got your papers in front of you, and it could feel very dry, but I think you deliver it in a way which shows that you are passionate about it.
Yeah, I played with the idea of going really news delivering guy, but then I saw that people were more interested when going with this more easy approach. I do have a script actually. I write a script. Usually, I was saying it, talking about it with another friend. I usually finish the first draft of the script on the Wednesday, but I just record in Thursday night so that I have the most recent news that we can get, and then usually on Thursday during the day I revisit. I see if I will squeeze something more or not. Usually trying to get around that 6 to 12 minutes long without the interview, because then when I was doing that, I also thought that it would be fun to have some people from the industry, even more from marginalized communities, talking about their experience in the indie scene and hyping their projects, hyping their games. So the first one was not from Latam or RPGC. It was with Pandateist. He also, because when I started it, it was during ZineQuest, which is a big event done by started by Kickstarter for publishing zines. And then I talked with Pandateist because he had a blog updated with all the projects going on during ZineQuest. The second one was already with someone from RPGC, the Southeastern community, the
Southeast Asian.
Southeast Asia community. That is Bianca Momatos. She now has a Kickstarter with ARC that she's partnering with Exalted Funerals. But and then trying to bring this different perspective of the game from the different scenes that we have, and getting this kind of inside, like Dwayne mentioned, this insider look on stuff, so that people still can get to know stuff. Because frankly, with the internet, we have access to so much information that parsing through it and seeing different stuff is something that sometimes is not easy.
And I think that for me, the that focus on some of those communities and creators that you don't get to see in a lot of other spheres is really important and really helpful. And I think that, for me as someone, I'm British, so English is my first language. You wouldn't always know it, but I'm white. It's sometimes you almost, if you don't make a conscious effort to seek those things out, it can easily just pass you by. And I think that's where you're helping people like me out in terms of opening my eyes to some of these things which are going on. And I think there's so many interesting different approaches, different views, different eyes on the world and on the concept of TTRPGs, which all just add richness to everything that we do.
Yeah, even like when we think about it, even going just outside, even if we stay with a huge, powerful community that is Europe, if we stray away from US and UK publishing, we already have a completely different experience, because people from these places, they do not have English as their first language, so they experience things differently. Because we also were discussing it in the Latam RPG Latam Discord, how languages matter as well, because the way that we understand stuff, it is a lot related with the way that we experience languages, and then we can have different experiences, as you mentioned, enriches this kind of idea. And then with the indie scene, we can have more easily that, because with each IO, you will have a lot of access to a lot of stuff easily, and it's not easy to search inside each.
Yeah.
So that's why also in the news is important, because then it puts the idea of the game there, and you also can then go to the link directly. You do not need to go to each and search for it, because each sometimes can be, it's easier from the publishing side. Like I myself publishing a game, it's very easy, it's very intuitive, and it's marvelous.
And
but for the
sorry, I
The
think
consumer, it's not
yeah,
that easy.
and I think each has lots of good things. Like so, I mean, from a publishing point of view, you can like set how much of the money comes to you rather than going to itch, which is not something you can do in other channels. Itch also allows you to have community copies of things so that people can access them when they're not in a financial position to do so. Lots of great things about itch. If people don't know about itch, itch.io is the website, and it's a basically a place for indie publishing. I know it's I would say it's relatively well known now, but as a place for people to go, so that you can get away from the likes of Drive Through RPG, which definitely, again, I think Drive Through RPG has its place, but if you want proper indie publishing, probably the place you're going to go to is Itch.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that OBS, because OBS is the holy sphere, because DM's Guild, Drive Through
Yeah,
RPG, Wargame Vault, everything is owned by OBS. That
yeah,
is the one bookshelf
yeah,
publisher or something like that.
yeah.
And it is okay. It
Mm-hmm.
is nice. You can find a lot of stuff there. It helps putting some eyes on your projects, your name, but it is clunky, as Duam said. In
Yeah,
the publishing side, it's
yeah. It
much
is.
tougher
It is.
than from the side of
Yeah.
each. And one thing that you mentioned that I thought that is very interesting is the fact of community copies, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
because community copies are something that I only saw starting from the indie side,
Mm-hmm.
like this concern for people, because since we are trying to get more communities, we have to be aware that we have a lot of financial
Mm-hmm.
disparities. And if you want also to be properly compensated by your effort. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're publishing, you want to put some value to it. So you
Absolutely.
put the price of the game. Discussion about price is something that is a whole other topic. I won't get into it. But even if you put as low as $2, for someone in Brazil, it can be enough to eat for more than one day
Yeah.
because of currencies and everything like that. So for them, it's expensive. And then having the opportunity to put community copies, so that for everyone that is not aware of community copies are copies that are put to favor the community. So you can just go there, claim access to it, and download without having to pay a thing. And then it helps people to get there. Usually, before community copies, a lot of indie publishers would already put, like, if you DM them and ask for a copy mention, they would not have a problem. But it's tough for some people that are in a tough financial position to go there, put their face out and say, oh, I do not
Yeah.
have the means to
Absolutely.
pay for it.
Absolutely.
So the community copies just allow you to get free access with no strings attached, no questions asked,
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think anything that takes away hurdles from people having to, take the action to say, actually, I can't afford to take part in this. I can't afford to do this. Whatever it is a fantastic thing. And I've seen people criticize the idea as, oh, so people could just take free copies. But I would rather that, four people got copies of something free and then the fifth person really needed it than that one person was missing out. Maybe that's whatever. But you can call me an idealist. But I think that yeah, and that's basically if you don't have some element of that, and I know people are going to probably call me up on this, but it's that kind of idea of financial gatekeeping into a hobby, and now everything has it. It's not. I'm not going to say, let's get away with money, let's live in a Star Trek world, whatever, but anything that we can do to break down some of those barriers, I think, is an important way to
yeah.
access.
I mean, a lot of people are saying it's a general and common complaint that, oh, I cannot schedule a game with my friends, or I do not find people to play with.
Yeah.
So having this, you have more people getting into playing games, and probably, like, if we take a logical step, you will have more people. More, it will be easily to schedule because more people, different availabilities, and everything like that. So, in a way, you are also making it easier for yourself.
And I think there's also the idea that for small creators, we have to be very careful here because I'm not suggesting that small creators should just do their stuff for like exposure and things like that. But getting your work into people's hands is a very important part of of being a small creator, being a small business, whatever it is. And obviously, as I say, we have to be careful that it doesn't become, well, I'm a big name in the industry, just give me all your stuff free and maybe I'll say something about it or whatever. That's obviously dangerous. But there is that barrier that people have. You've created something great. How do you get it into people's hands? How do you get people playing it, understanding it?
And I guess that one thing that comes from indie is something that we have a lot in the movies, for instance, that you know the name of the director, you know the name sometimes of the producer and so on. But in RPGs, a lot of the time you do not know the name of the designers.
Mm-hmm.
In the indie scene, it's much more prominent from you to know which is the guy or the girl, the person that designed the game.
Yeah.
And then because sometimes they designed a lot of different ones, but you like their perspective, you like how they do stuff, and this kind can really take you to experience different stuff. Like Chris, as I mentioned, he released an adventure for Mark Borg. My first contact with his games was with an adventure for fifth edition.
Mm-hmm.
And by any means, if anyone needs to publish for fifth edition to make a living, go for it. But then knowing his way of doing stuff, knowing how he writes, what is the energy that he puts into his games, was why I tried to play The Wretched. That is a solo game with a Jenga tower that I probably would never have tried if I was not trying games from the indie scene and going from a creator that I know, I admire, and
I'm probably up back. Is Jenga made by Hasbro? I'm just trying to figure out if we go full circle back to Hasbro.
Jenga is made by Hasbro.
Okay.
So a block tower.
Okay, yeah. Any nondescript block tower will do. Absolutely. But one of the other things I think, and you talked about that there a little bit, is one of the things that I see a lot in the indie scene is that there are a lot of people out there who are willing to help and get involved and are not necessarily precious about what they're doing, but will share some experience, will talk, will work together in ways that I think has to be good for the scene, has to be good for people playing. And you mentioned that you'd kind of started by looking at the stuff that Chris did and working from there.
And then like RPG Latam actually is like the Latin American community, and we kind of went from RPGC. RPGC started, they now even have a cross RPGC, which is pretty nice. It's a platform where you can go there and it randomly generates, puts in front of you a game designed by the RPGC community.
Oh, that's awesome.
And this was created alone by Momatos, Bianca, and maintained by her. And it's amazing. When you look at it, you think, okay, it was a professional team that put it, and she did it all by herself. Wow. But yeah, then RPG Latam came from this idea of RPGC, because then we can work together. We have now a Discord where we exchange experiences, we exchange ideas, we review each other's stuff all the time. Like when I was doing one of my first recently published titles, I talked with some creators from Brazil. They gave me so many pointers with layout, because layout is something entirely different from just writing the game. And you have this kind of try to partake or go in the road together, because some of them are amazing designers in their day jobs. And then they can also pass this experience. Since I speak English in a very good level, I would say, I do a lot of editing, proofreading for them and everything like that, because some, as you mentioned, some do not have English as the first language or even the second sometimes. And then it's very common in Latin America to English being their third language. A lot of Brazilians have like Portuguese, then Spanish, and then English, because of usefulness.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess particularly if you kind of living on a border or near a border between Brazil and any of the other Latin American countries, where Spanish would be probably I don't know the intricacies of the borders necessarily, but obviously most of the countries of Latin America speak Spanish as a first language. So
we have some cities that we call Like I know one of them that I used to visit a lot is Rivera, and Rivera is a city that is in Uruguay, and we have Santana do Livramento, that is a city that is in Brazil, and we call it Fronteira da Paz, or Peace Frontier, because you just cross a street and you are in the other country.
Right.
Some people live in one, work in another,
Yeah.
and so on, and
Hmm.
you have this kind of exchange in different languages
Yeah.
all the time. So they have these experiences.
Yeah.
It happens here in Europe as well,
Yep. Hmm.
but I would say that a lot of people are not aware that you have that in Latin America and in other countries. This is the thing. It's not that everything that we have there is just unique. Sometimes some experiences are more universal than people are aware
Hmm.
of.
Yeah. Yeah. Duam says Brazil is a layout powerhouse, but I think what we were talking about there, like sometimes we've talked a lot about game design, about creating games, which has been fantastic. But I think sometimes it's almost a little bit overlooked that creating a game for publication, for sale, whatever it might be, actually involves lots of different skills. So you have to create the game, as you say. You have to often do the writing, the layout, the editing. Often you need to get people to like help playtest it, work through stuff like that. There are a lot of different roles involved, aren't there, in bringing a game to
Finding
creation?
images, licensing for
Hmm.
images. This is something like you have so many good images free,
Mm.
but you have to know where to look at, where to search. We had up until recently a Patreon where it is from a guy from Brazil, but that he would search for public domain images, just clean them up so that you can just take them and put into your game and so on. So it's a lot of different skills that you need. I made an objective to my year to improve my layout design,
Right.
because what I published up until last year, I was doing layout either via LaTeX,
Oh yeah.
for creating
Latex. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
latex to creating academia papers,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or Word,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah. No, no. The famous thing of where I've made a few supplements and bits and pieces in the past as well, and I've used Word for some of them, and it's that old thing of, okay, I'm just going to put something in here. Oh, so you wanted to move everything from here to the next page? No, no, I really didn't. And so it's that thing of, it's not just having an eye for it, it's being able to understand the technologies that are involved. I mean, obviously, it's not quite the same thing exactly, but you're talking about making in the news. You've got that video editing to go in. So there's a lot of different skills, and I think it's amazing that there are those communities, there are those groups where you can kind of share those skills around. There are people who are willing to help out. Yeah, because otherwise it can be quite overwhelming, all the different things that there are
yeah.
involved in those
And
things.
one thing that I think that is important to bring to people attention as well is that indie RPGs are not synonymous with cheap or not well developed, not well made. Like you have these kind of leaflet ones that I enjoy. Like this one is a hack for Backpackers and Dream, which is Jetpack and Dream. It's from where, but you also have some. See, this is an indie one. You have hardback, you
Hmm.
have the ribbon, you have high
Yeah,
quality
that's
stuff.
that's another crispy set one, isn't it?
This one is Crispy Set. This one is not. This one is Necronautilus, which is also another indie one. This is from an American guy. So you have very high quality products from the indie scene. You do not need to just put that. Okay, it's just like zines, because zines now are getting more and more professional looking.
Yeah, and
And
I
when
think.
you look that
Sorry.
it's one guy doing one person doing it all. Sometimes it's
And I think that's one of the things that I don't know whether it's actually changed in the kind of indie RPG community, or whether it's come more to mainstream. But that's definitely something that I've noticed in the last 2, 3. I lose track of time. 5 years maybe. Is it has definitely moved towards that much more. I don't want to use the word professional, but it's not just, okay, well, here's something on the back of an envelope or whatever. It is a very well designed, created. The whole product is fantastically created. It's not just someone's put a lot of work into a game and then made a Google Doc of it or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, people are familiar with indie music from a long time, and indie music it's pretty good music developed, made. It is professionally made. We can use the word. It was professionally made. It is done by a pro.
Yeah, I think the only reason I was looking to move away from professional was I didn't want to say that the things done before that weren't professional. That was the distinction I was trying to make. But yeah,
yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, it's as Dwam said, all indie projects, they are kind of a passion project. So, and also, if you cannot do a good layout, for instance, and you want to get into indie games, you can still do it because the community is like, okay, so I write, you do the layout, we will do royalty sharing. You have plenty of different ways. But going back to the side of the consumer, you now have a lot more ways to get your hands also in games, because now we are having more distributors. We have like Exalted Funerals in the US. We have So Muppet in the UK, where they are like, you can develop the game and they will do the publishing for you in physical copy. And then it helps putting this in the hand of people, because, for instance, if I want a game that is developed in the US by someone, for me to buy from there, pay shipping from the US, imports, VATs and everything, it is quite expensive and difficult. The same thing from someone from Brazil importing from Europe. But then with these distributors, it's much easier. I can contact some up in the UK, or there are some distributors in Germany, and you can then get this distribution. Even for some other, we can call it indie, still a Morkborg. It was distributed by Free League, which is as we said, it is a behemoth. It's not the size of D&D and Wizards, okay? But it is still a behemoth. It is someone that can put the legwork to put the game in all the corners of the world. And then it makes easier for people to consume these different games as well.
Yeah, and I think, as we said before, that's always the thing, isn't it? It's about how you get those passion projects, those things that you've worked incredibly hard on, into people's hands. And the more tools there are to do that, the more people there are willing to help, the more kind of reasonable companies there are, because we all know there are probably companies around that you don't necessarily want to work with in these things. So where there are kind of friendly companies which understand the field, understand what's gone into it, and can help bring that to fruition, that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, totally. Then you can also sometimes have an experience, because each one of us, we are unique. So we have different experiences, we have different tastes, we have different whatever you can imagine of. Sometimes the game that you usually have access in the mainstream is not a game that reflects your experience in life or what you want to experience in game. And then with indie games, since you have a myriad of titles coming from people with different backgrounds, with different ideas, with different experiences, it better translates sometimes with the experience that you are looking towards. Because as Dwam said, it is a passion project. Most of the time, or all indie projects have to have a little bit of passion and a little bit of ego, that okay, you can do that, you can make it. But it's something that you hold dear, and you translate your experience into that, and then someone that has a similar background as you and wouldn't have a game to play with that experience, with that background, if it was not done by someone in the indie scene.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly important, is that idea of having a game that represents your own experience and that you can really identify with. And I think it's also, as we were saying before, there is that importance then of also putting that in front of people who haven't had that experience, who can then engage with that in a way that maybe helps them better understand. I think that that's also a really important function of that.
Being someone that comes from a small town in Brazil, and small, okay, 80,000 people, it's considered small in Brazil, okay, not the tiniest, but small.
Sure.
Then moving to the capital of my state, I saw different. I had one idea of the world when I was in that small town. I changed my idea of the world when I started having the experience or living with other people that had different backgrounds. Then I moved to Germany. Now I am in France. And then you see different experiences. And then you can see that your experience that you saw in the beginning is not universal. It's not everyone that has the same view.
Yeah.
So having games that can mimic some of these life experiences, as you said, is very important to allow some people to grow and better live together with these other backgrounds, these other.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people don't necessarily see how much the games that they're playing are informed by particular worldview. So, I mean, again, to go back to Dungeons and Dragons, because that's kind of the behemoth on these things. I think there is a danger that you look at that and you think, well, it's dwarves and elves and whatever. So that's no one's life experience, so it's fine. It's just fantasy. But even all of those things are so rooted in the cultures that they come from and the histories and all of those other things that because it's kind of clothed in the disguise of fantasy, it's easy to kind of miss those things sometimes. And so using these other ways to elves are real. Pete the Priest corrects me, but you know what I mean. It's that idea that you kind of need to look a little bit deeper, and so sometimes people still can't recognize those experiences even in a fantasy setting because that's not where they are or where they come from.
Yeah, for instance, I have an adventure that I published for Morkborg. That, okay, it has magic, it has a giant snake and so on, but actually, because it was also for a folklore jam, it is informed by the experience of South Brazil, where we have a legend of a giant snake in an old church with some indigenous people. So you have all of that in a kind of way, I do not want to use allegory in the wrong way, but it's kind of representing this kind of allegory of some ideas, of some experiences, and some of them are not right in the face.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, even from my perspective, so I'm, for those of you who don't watch normally, I am Scottish. I don't sound Scottish, but I am. And like Celtic mythology is one that kind of gets used and abused a lot in different ways, but actually there's a lot there to explore and understand, and there is meaning to mythology. There always is because it grows to express something, it goes to represent something, it's about an understanding of the world, and so using those things actually is an important way of helping people to see how that culture has grown and where that comes from.
Yeah, a lot of mythology was to explain something that happened in real life.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so the sun comes up every day. How does it happen? Okay, you have some big guy that takes it and transports in the chariot, or that yeeks it, and every you have different ways to try to describe stuff.
Yeah, and so I mean, a couple of the kind of famous Celtic things that you never kind of see are around the Kelpies, which are evil horses that explain when people are in particular situations, why they might be in danger in particular areas. The Selkie, which is about a seal which can take off its skin and appear human, and it's all about kind of different ways of understanding the interactions with the real world, I think.
Yeah. Exactly, like these different mythologies and tales, they, as you said, they were trying to. It's like us trying to come up with a theory nowadays. Even science, like I am in academia, you were in academia. We try to comprehend with the details that we have. The details that they had at the time were that, and then they come up with and their experience was that, and then they come up with a theory to try and. And then when they got refuted, okay, then we kind of said, okay, they are mythology, they are tales.
Yep.
but they still represent some experience and
Mm.
some ideas that they had and how they built
Yes.
that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's quite an arbitrary line between mythology and like early science when you think about some of the like, well, everything revolves around the Earth. Well, why is that science and not mythology? You know, all of those kind of ideas are really interesting. So we're pretty much out of time. It's been a fascinating. I'd love to have delved more into like the idea of language because I know obviously you've lived in a number of different places and speak a number of different languages. We talked about that a little bit, but let's because we don't want to keep people here for ages and ages. Tell us a little bit about the kind of games that you've created and where they came from in your experience.
Okay, so I created some. A lot of my games are inspired by music, actually.
Okay.
Uh, the one of the first ones that actually the first one that they published for a whole game is a one-page game, Keep on Rowing, and it started by the idea listening to a music by Soundgarden, which is rowing, and I really love the music. And then rowing. Then I went to the I do not how to name that, the galleys, the that people row.
Mm-hmm.
Then they
Yeah, yeah,
Gallic, yeah. Some of them were actually slaves, but
galleon.
not all of them.
Galleon is probably what we're going for.
Yeah, and then I started researching that, and then I went into French history and how all of that, and
Yeah.
then came up with a game released in the beginning of the pandemic, which
Mm-hmm.
is a collaborative experience of people. You have some difficulties during the game during the day, and then people try to support one another, and they can give bonuses one another. So it's a gemless game where you can then try and live and help each other out and support each other out. Another one was Ravaging Mob, which is also a game based. It is kind of trying to give that idea of mob justice,
Right.
and it's yourself. You're trying to survive and come up with excuses, not but explanations
Mm-hmm.
to say why you should not be killed by this mob, actually, in the
I love
old
it.
ages, the dark ages.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the reasons that people would get killed is they are just mind-blowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then actually I went to some other ones. The latest one was a very chaotic experience, actually. It's out of the loop. You are actually in a time space loop, and it's kind of an element, a spirit of yourself that is thrown in different words. Each word is procedurally generated by the dice,
Mm-hmm.
and then you try to survive during this time until you are thrown into another time loop, and then you just go on. And the end of is trying to go back into your own timeline and time
Right.
space, and perhaps discovering what have changed, because perhaps you go back, but some 100 years passed or
Yeah.
something like that.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So are they all available on your itch store?
Yeah, they are all available in my each page. All of them have community copies. Some of them are even pay what you want.
And what's the URL for your itch store? Is it just itch.io slash
It's different. It's actually I will put it in the
yeah. Yeah.
chat.
Please
It's
do.
because it's C.A.Berlitz.itch.io.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's the other
Okay.
way around.
But yeah, put a link in there. Do check that out. And yeah, wonderful. So you can find all of Carlos's stuff on there. And your latest in the news will be going up soon whenever your technology cooperates with you. But there are already 17 episodes of it to check out. So do check that out.
There is even a playlist with all the episodes that feature interviews. If you want only to see the interviews.
Okay. And what about, so do you want to put a quick link in? I know I'm putting you on the spot. Do you want to put a link to your YouTube page?
Yeah, this is easy because it's youtube.com/CA.Berlitz.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Good stuff. And then I am. Oh, that hasn't linked. Oh, because it's
Because
a
I
colon.
put, yeah.
YouTube :com. Yeah. Okay. And I will put a link in again to the video that we did a couple of weeks ago now, which was our top 5 non-D&D RPGs. So that's the link that I've just put in. That's the last chat that Carlos and I had. So wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, and thank you everybody in chat as well. It's been a fantastic morning.
Yeah, thank you very much for your help. And as promised, I talked a little bit of Portuguese so that people that talk Portuguese can see how my Portuguese sounds like.
Well, so Lenore said so she had to duck out. But she said she was going to watch the VOD. So you can prepare for some comments on that. I think.
Yeah,
So,
probably.
good stuff. Good stuff. Oh, thank you for all the kind comments, everybody. I've had a fantastic hour. It has been wonderful. I'll just say, there's Katarina. So Katarina can comment on the Portuguese. As I say, thank you so much for joining us. It has been amazing. I will be back on Tuesday. I might have a special stream on Tuesday, so we'll see. We'll see, but I will let you know details of that beforehand.
Oh, and also you now got 200
Yes,
subscribers or something, and
100
then
followers. Yeah.
you have
Yes.
your
So
game
we
as
are going to
well.
have our one shot. It's going to be at the very beginning of July because we've got some scheduling things, so we're going to make sure it happens then. But I will give full details. If you are a follower, you'll be able to get involved with that. You will be able to vote. You'll be able to give people advantage, disadvantage, all that kind of thing. We are doing D&D for the first one to get everybody in. But I would love to do more. Maybe in the future, at some point, Carlos, we can collaborate and get an indie game played on the channel. That would be amazing. Oh, thank you, the Ball GM. Very kind. Oh, I haven't got my notifications up here, but that was a very kind cheer. Thank you, the Ball GM. Love it. And also, I should get you back on to do the Sports Tavern at some point soon because the Sports Tavern is a new stream that Andy Geek Curio and I have started to talk sport, where we can be both sporty and nerdy, and you can do all of those things together because we're big sports fans. Carlos, you're a big sports fan as well, but I know rugby is your kind of main sport.
Yeah.
But soon after Euro 2020 finishes, it's time for a Lions tour.
Yeah.
So
I do not know what to expect from the Springboks.
but we should definitely have a sports tavern where you come on and we can talk some Lions tour and rugby and all that kind of stuff. So that would be amazing. That'd be amazing.
Totally.
Okay, so I'm just excited for everything going on. But thank you so much, Carlos, and thank you all for being in chat. Wonderful people, and I'd hope to see you again soon at another stream. Thank you, everyone. Bye now.